So today we have the four entrepreneurs here with us. So you hear the background, so they're very experienced business people. And then we are today talking about the topic, global trends for startup companies. So whenever you see a successful, businessman or woman, someone who must made numerous courageous decisions. All of them here have been running business for many years. Obviously, they have made numerous courageous decisions. So, firstly, Dr. Bo, I'll introduce you first. Okay. So Dr. Bo, he said he is working very hard, trying to spend at least 1 hour a day playing computer games, PUBG, and he also working on a small project of improving his gaming skills. Anyway, so, James likes to study Chinese feng shui. And then playing around with the feng shui compass in his leisure time. He has two kids, both aged 10 and 12. Yeah, and we have Luban here, who was born and already know he's gonna be, study architect because his parents named him after the famous architect, Chinese actor Luban. Yeah, actually it's a true story. And he likes wine tasting, so you can register for the alumni. There's some discounts, wine stuff. Yeah, and Joe is working on making sourdough every week. Not sure about doing the real work. At the same time, she's looking after her lockdown pet, a chichong, which is a crossbreed of Xingzu and the bichong. Now they call it Xingchong. Now her life is completely changed. She has to, arrange her life and work arrangement around her dog. Yeah. So our first question is going to be really relevant to this panel discussion. Is New Zealand is a small country, right? It is mostly isolated from major startup players. So what are our strengths and weakness as a small country? And also New Zealand startup companies, what are advantages or what are the weaknesses we need to come across? We can start with Dr. Lin first.
Yeah, I'd probably say ladies first. I think it's an easy question. Otherwise, if I go first, please.
Okay. Very considerable. Okay, I will start with and take probably the easy ones. So I think the strengths for New Zealand, I would say New Zealand is a place good for the innovation R&D. We see quite a lot of particular engineer or the technology focus founder from New Zealand. So I would say that is advantage because we're so isolated. So you have to figure out your way to do things. So I think that's probably a good way to practice your brand. And I think also for a lot of tech company, New Zealand is a very good test bed for a lot of tech company because we have quite a small market, but we have the demography. It's quite similar, particularly for the Western market. So it's like a small model. You can actually test whether it's work or fail quite quickly. So like big tech company even use New Zealand as quite a good test bed for their better product. So I will say this is the second advantage. And third one, I think probably before COVID, previously we are quite attractive destination place to attract the global talent. I'm not quite sure now, but used to be. Right. So I think this will be the third strength I think of New Zealand. New Zealand is. And I think the weakness is also because we are so isolated. So if you are solely grown up or live in the environment in New Zealand, it's a bit hard for you to imagine the market particular mass market like US or China, how things work there, and sometimes a bit too relied on the research or the agent on the ground. So I would say that might be a weakness. Particular for startup, you have to actually go to the market and understand how things work instead of just use your imagination. So I will leave the others for that's really.
Okay, we're going this way. So Luban, you're next.
Good evening, everyone. For this marketing, we think about the same, especially for the startup companies. can we think about the threshold when you join this industry? If you start a new company, join this business or industry, the threshold, we can feel in New Zealand the market is very open. That's why a lot of you guys here, I'm pretty sure, you can join this game to play the, for example, real estate development. But you know that a lot of industrial business, we have a threshold is very high. And it's not, for example, real estate development. In a lot of other countries, maybe the threshold is very high. We couldn't join this game. So I think that's the strength for this marketing in New Zealand here. Regarding about weakness, we know this is a small market. So the marketing demand is very limited. So sometimes we can know that, we may heard that some company may bankrupt or the business stopped. The reason is not because they are not strong enough or big enough. Action is because they're too big, too strong. They couldn't adjust themselves to fit the marketing change of this environment. So that's my feeling about this marketing, especially for startup companies. Yes, thanks.
Very quick.
Well, to me, New Zealand being a small economy, it is its weakness, but then it's also its advantage. Like Jill said, a lot of companies are using New Zealand as a test ground, like Microsoft testing one of their games first in New Zealand, and Facebook, I mean, the Google and Giants, they're testing their new softwares in New Zealand first. There's an article in the Economics magazine that says Kiwis are the guinea pigs for all these the digital giants from the States. Mainly because we are innovative, we are receptive to new technologies. And then we have probably we're one of the easiest place in the world to establish a business. I think cost about what, $100 to register a company, and you're a boss instantly. Everyone can register a company tonight and then become a boss and an entrepreneur straight away. And we are also probably one of the cheapest place to hire people, right? Like, in the Western countries, that is why we're getting a lot of our people being brain drained over to Australia at the moment. All right. I think that's probably.
Yeah, that's all for my time. I think to me, when it turns to me, it's a bit difficult because we talked about lots of answers. And then I probably talk about the weakness first. I think there will be three weaknesses from my point of view. First, of course, the small market. So New Zealand got relative small populations. It's the first one. Second is the because of the small market, we get less business models. So we probably see kind of old-fashioned things. And then that's the weakness. For the strengths, of course, one of the things is easy to do startup. And then you can easy to start a company. You don't face lots of legal issues. The second strength, I think, is because this small market, we also have quite a lot of opportunities from other countries. For lots of new business model in other countries, I haven't seen in New Zealand. But you need to, as a startup, you may need to test the market. Something working in other countries, maybe not work in New Zealand. The last strength I probably think from the big picture is the geopolitical. So I think New Zealand in a position as a country have a good relation with most of country. We talk about China, American. It's kind of okay. So you can get things from America, you can get things from China. So it's kind of easy to do startup here.
Okay, so New Zealand is like have the strength and weakness. Easier, most companies small, easy to get funding, or easy to set up the business, and compared to large companies, easy to turn the ship around. Rather than like a big overhead companies, hard to turn the ship around. And small tech is New Zealand quite innovative. Yeah. So sometimes, we know trends come and go, just like fashion. So how do you see your business identifying the trends, changing trends, in order to scale up your business? We can start from you.
Okay. So I probably talk about two like long-term trend and short-term trend. For the short-term, obviously, it's the COVID. So we kind of enter the post-COVID period. So for the business, I think for myself is looking for the new opportunities, new business, a new industry. So you're probably doing one thing as before, and then at this post-COVID period, you probably think doing something new because lots of industry have reshuffled. You think about tourism, you think about hotel, you think about restaurants. So for the short term, there's I think lots of opportunities. For the long term, or maybe medium long term, I think the trend is technology. So everyone these days talk about internet plus digitalization, digital transformation. So you really need to think about like what this technology means. In my opinion, is how can we use technology as lever, and then we change the whole industry value chain. So either we create more demands, like we have new technology, because it's much easier to doing things, and then the demands being created, and then result the whole industry revolution. So that's the technology, and then the cover is my answer.
James.
Right, how we identify trends.
Yeah, especially property market and stuff.
Yeah. Real estate industry, and the thing is, one of the strengths in New Zealand is a lot of the data are transparent. We can subscribe to pretty much almost all data that we need from the council, from a lot of places. And that's where we identify trends. For example, 2 years ago, I was watching, looking at the data from the council. A lot of people are applying for resource consent. What are they doing? They're trying to build terrace houses. And then there are so many, there's 300-400 projects. And then we say, we know something's coming. And we approach all these developers, and then we sell tons of them. And then he's one of the that does the design and planning. So, the thing is, with real estate in New Zealand, because it's so transparent and the availability of data is sort of abundant, we can identify trends pretty easily. We can know what's happening in the next 6 months, 12 months, and 24 months plus. You mentioned about the feng shui, and it's pretty accurate.
Right, for predict the trends, that's very interesting. I study here and graduated from the engineering school. So what I learned from Auckland University or the Western country is when we do a big decision making, what's the thing to support our decision making? Data collection, data analysis, assessment, get a conclusion results, and then make a decision. That's what I learned from here. So this data collection support our prediction. That's why just now she mentioned, when she talk something without the data support, she said, I haven't got the data. They're very serious. And James, he also mentioned that one thing's good here is the data transparent. But sometime or before I study here, decision making, sometimes I don't rely on the data. Sometimes we rely more about what's my feeling. The reason is, that's why James now, he knows this data is transparent, but every time when he do prediction for the trends of the real estate, as well as on feng shui, as well as on I Ching, not the data he can see from newspaper or get from us. So that's interesting because we know that data collection is good, but it's hard to get a very comprehensive data to support your research. While sometimes we can get a data if something happened in the past, but we can't guarantee that will repeat in the future. For example, they predict based on the previous history, which year there will be the boom from real estate marketing. So that's my feeling, because sometimes we may miss some important data, or the data what we get is not comprehensive. Well, I don't want to say what we guess, what my feeling is correct, but sometimes it's, I don't know how to say that, but it's, maybe I made a mistake, I guess something, but also that's correct. Thank you.
Cool. I think for me, probably because we had we have see a lot of new startup people doing new things. So I probably won't say I can identify a trend for them. I think for me is I will, because I believe everyone, particularly you have your specialized area, you probably can see some trend in your area and expertise, which the mass market might not be know. So I think for us, we actually really want to identify whether you are in quite good at your area, and you see, well, this is some unmet demand in your area, which in the future that might be something goes to. And I think this is how our way to identify. I won't set something there. I'm quite open, but I want you tell me from your research study area what you see is a trend, and let's see whether they're going to be the trend. So I think this is how I see the trend in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's like trends is hard to tell. It's like basically it's based on the data analysis, right? So, but I can tell from future, definitely Web3, maybe it's all people talk about. It's going to be the future. Blockchain, maybe you guys don't want to talk about it, but I think blockchain maybe will be considered as the future, especially after the merge of the Ethereum 2.0, right? Anyway, that's what my thinking about future trend is. So, another question is quite interesting. So, for all of you have started your business from startup stage, right? Like from a baby stage to now, like in the more mature stage. But at the startup stage, can you remember some of the most challenging things you have to encounter? Is it related to fundings or competitions or talent or anything else you think is hard, which you spend more time try to focus on? We can start with. Do you want to put your hand up? Or do you want to? Okay, we can start with. Maybe we can start with Joe. You can talk about the companies you see, like most of startups. What are the most difficult things or challenging things you see they are facing, which you are actually helping them?
I think different type of company, they have a different struggle. But I feel quite a few the key or common one is when people say I have idea, and to narrow it down to it actually can be a business model, particularly when they are looking for a very immature market with try to form a new model and to prove that actually it's we call MVP or something to tell that is actually a real demand. I think that is a quite common difficult part. All fundraising or others is once if investors, other people can see actually this is going to be something, then those parts are actually a little bit more like decoration. Or it will be ideal. Some founders are actually quite talented, very good at fundraising, but I won't say this is really something critical or the part. I think to prove the demand is a real demand, the thing you want to build actually is a real thing. I think that is the most, I will say it's the most challenging part, particularly you're building something from scratch.
Okay. Ruben, do you want to share your side?
I think it's subject to what your business is doing there. if your business is an investment, I guess maybe funding is important. But if your business is provide some service or product, I think one thing we need to consider more is about sustainable. So if you're an investor, you need to consider when is the time you start joining and what's the time you leave from that business. But if you provide some product or service, for example, like my company, we provide those innovation management service. So actually, we didn't consider about what's the time we leave from this industry. Probably continues in my whole life. So we think about more is about sustainability. The sustainable relationship between your company with the employees, the sustainable relationship with clients and the local society. That's the most important and also the most challenging. That's my feeling. The most challenging part, especially to treat this relationship with your employees, with the local society, with your clients. So that's why FS Group, Action FS, is the abbreviation for future sustainable.
Challenge. Well, I think as entrepreneurs, we should turn challenges into opportunities.
So Gary Tony Robbins, right?
Instead of focusing on challenges. For example, when I first started, there was no money to lease or hire an office, right? So what do? We put printers, a scanner in the back of my car. And then we just print and scan on the go. And that actually saves a lot of time and money traveling between the offices. So that was a challenge becoming an opportunity. And then, I mean, like, when people see that, they think, hey, that's fun, then they started joining. And then we had to an office. Then, like one of the speakers has mentioned, at the start of your business, it's all about being cost effective. Not being cheap, but cost effective. So we don't have like 12 years ago, we don't have a single landline in the office, all VoIPs. And then we have no admin staff. We do have admin staff back end, they are in somewhere else, Philippines, Malaysia, and all that, through the internet. So, challenges, I mean, to me, it's more fun and excitement than challenges. So I don't feel it's a challenge.
Okay, I just want to share my own experience. Probably it's different from other people. I remember like 10 years ago when people asked me to do business together. So the first thing I asked how much share I will get. And these days, if they ask me to do the startup together, I will ask how much money I will get. I don't want shares, right? So for the startup, it's the same thing. I think, like from my point of view, it's the money. So no matter it's about the people management or the competition, it's actually all about money. It's not about lots of money. It's about like you need to, in a different stage of the startup, you need a certain amount of money. If you want to talk about small things, you need small money. You talk about big things, you need big money. You talk about licensing, you need a licensing money. You talk about government, or you talk about relation, you need a relationship monies. So it's like, I would say it's a coffee money. So for the startup, I think most important challenge is the funding. And then especially for the early stage, the angel fund, it's not that easy. And then there's one thing I also want to share with the, if you want to do startup, before investment, your share is valueless. So don't take share that serious, take money. You need money to run the company. So one of the things I forget to share in the weakness of New Zealand, the labor cost is really, really high. It's not only the labor cost, it's the labor legal cost.
Yeah, true. So, but however, if you want to register a company, it still costs $120 to set up a company. And but if you want to run your company, it might take money. So as James said, there's cost-effective ways that you can outsource. There's a lot of outsource opportunities, which we can talk about fiber or like skills, like outsource to Philippines or Indonesia, and also if anyone interested in the government fundings, you can talk to Joe, because Joe used to work for Caligan Innovation, which they help startup with startup grants and startup fundings and project funds. So if you're interested, you can talk to Joe after the networking. So I think fundings could be an issue, competitions and talents could be issues, but as James talked about, this challenge is also opportunities. So don't hold back. Just if you want to start up a company, you can still set up a company for $120. So this year, 2022, is like to be the year when responsible investors sector move out from the shadow to stand firmly in the spotlight. It's no longer considered to be a niche players. The increasing prominence of the environmental, social, governance factors in investment decision come a long way. So when we talk about the responsible investment means economic, environmental, social, governance, ESG is a popular concept now. It refers to a set of standards for a company's behavior used by social conscious investors to screen potential investment. So many VCs and angel investors and even companies are focusing on ESGs now. So I want to ask all the speakers here, because I know Joe is in angel investors and there's some companies here as well. What are your thoughts and what's your plans for a ESG strategy for your company?
I think ESG, it's definitely a must-tick box for all the funds and institutional investors these days. Something, it's the right thing to do for all investors. So, but I think when you come to investor, there are a few types of investors, particularly in New Zealand, right? You got a lot of institutions like VCP, those are more corporate, and you might also have some like family offices, those wealthy family, they have a family investment office, but also for angels, you actually have a lot of individual angels. So for ESG, when it comes to from more corporate level to a more individual level, then I will say it's more for the investors' preference.
I think different types of company. Some company, maybe they get this funding is useful. They can use to develop the company, the business. But it doesn't mean that all type of companies, they need the funding. They are so starved about the funding. That's my view.
Yeah, well, ESG is a pretty good framework. This is a very interesting matter, because during the lockdown, and this before August last year, during the lockdown, a lot of people are coming back from overseas, and that has increased the demand for housing in New Zealand, heaps of them. And then in terms of governance, we have a lot of different legal structure, or acts, unit titles act, GST Act, and then we have new unitary plans and the recent new councils, regulations for allowing the land to be subdivided without having to apply for resource consent. And during the lockdown, in terms of ESG, and then the thing is, every half a year we have to adjust our product line. Like most people think of real estate as houses, but real estate is more than houses. There are commercial buildings like this, specialist buildings like this, childcare center, funeral homes, they are all different types of real estate. Then during the lockdown, every developer was like almost crying, what do we do now? Then some of us, we came up with something, because during the lockdown we are allowed to do click and collect. So we created a new product with the developer being an industrial units, so it's been quite popular. So and then last year we were selling a lot of terrace houses I mean, if you see in the news, we sold 80 in a day. But now you can't even sell one in 80 days. So what we do now, we switch product line again to commercial leasing because a lot of people coming into New Zealand, travel agencies, travel-related businesses are popping up again. So they need space for offices or retail spaces or maybe car yards and things like that. So,
you know, I think in the construction sector now they talk about a lot of like sustainable materials and then
recycle.
Recycle, yeah, maybe.
Recycle wood.
Like modular houses,
Yeah,
like 3D printing houses.
I saw some like using eco-friendly, like a hip useless like
Waste.
sorry.
Yeah, I saw some quite interesting development actually from ESG perspective as well. So more like environmental, like we call like breath house. They're using like hemp or those mixing natural fiber to building the houses, so which will helping like keep the natural temperature, so using less power and also like less environmental pollute. So this is what I actually see some ESG happen, like focus in the building industry as well. Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Dr. Lin, do you want to share your?
Well, I think for this ESG things, for the startup, you probably can see this is a big war and long-term things. You probably have this kind of things in your mind. Probably this, well, I think just 3-stage things. First one, you think about the social. So the social, it contains lots of parts. So one of things is about your customers. So if you really doing a startup, you need to focus on customers. So customers satisfaction and then what's their demand. And then once the company start growing, and then you think about governance, so about talent, about your staff. How can you, keep you valuable staff in your company with the lowest cost? That's the governance. That is the most important things. And then in the future, when you're going to B run or C run, you think about environment. So I think this is why I think about the ESG related to the startup.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I think a lot of the research, the universities also focus on a lot of our ESG topic as well. I think there's a lot of research programs, doing project on ESG. So if anyone interested, can refer to the university for more details. So now, as a startup point of view, do you think it's a good time to start a business in the next 6 to 12 months? And what are the challenges you think it might be, facing for new startup? If audience here want to start up a new company, like soon.
So I always say it's good time to start tomorrow. So if you want to start something, start earlier, because I always believe if you got a good idea, there's definitely somebody out there can get the same ideas. You're not the only smart one. So for the advice, I would say first you need to have certain control of your life. Startup is not only about the company, it's about yourself. If you need to have a certain control, and then if you lost the control down the line, you won't be that good. And second thing is you need a business plan. So I see lots of so when we talk about business plan, I think maybe you start from the business study, you're writing a business plan, but I suggest it's just a simple calculation: how much you spend, how much you're earning, how much the cost, and how much you earn. So that's the simple question. I see lots of startups, they just want to start something, or they can do something, or I love to do something, but they fail to calculate the profit, the pure profit, and then down the line, it's another tragedy. I won't say tragedy, it's another story. And then lastly, I would suggest to ask some professionals like Richard. So just talk to them, talk about your business idea. So don't be scared they will copy your idea. Trust us. We're not that free. So talk to the professional people, talk about your idea, your market, and they probably will give you some ideas or the mark down the road. How can we do it? So that's the suggestion I give to the startup.
Okay, James, any of your suggestions? Any time to start up a new company?
That's $1 million question. It's like when should you get married?
Yesterday.
Or when should you have a baby? You know, sometimes this happens by accident. So the thing is, I mean, that's the same point as actually from a famous speaker. So when you start a business, when you are absolutely passionate about that idea that you have. What if you fail? Who cares? Do it again, you know, start again. And a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of those people on the rich list, they've been bankrupted 3 times in their life before they make it. You know, don't be afraid to make mistakes. But the thing is, one advice I hear was, which I think is really good, make a lot of mistakes as early as possible.
Yeah, thank you, James.
Right. Yeah, definitely that's a 1 million questions. So my friend, no matter whether you're in a start or you're running a business, very frankly, very, very important is cash flow. You may get a good business plan and you start this business. You may predict you'll get 2 million profit after 2 years. But we think about it, whether you self-check, whether you get sufficient cash flow until you get a 2 million profit. For example, today the real estate marketing, or if we research the real estate marketing price from in the past, most of these countries, we can say the price always goes up overall. But a lot of those companies bankrupt. That's because they can't success because of cash flow issue. Just that half a year or 1 year. Overall, definitely they will make money. If they overcome that very short period, solve all those cash flow issue, they will also make money, get a big profit. So that's my feeling. Number 1, cash flow.
Yeah, I think that actually you 3 probably already say what I want to say. So yeah, I think the timing is definitely when you think your project startup is ready. You know, it's good to start test it sooner than later. And also, actually, a lot of great companies are built during the downturn, because as we know, we probably will go into another recession downturn. But actually, a lot of those great tech companies, they're actually founding in a downturn because you can see a lot of opportunity there. And also, as the other 3, our panelists say, to control your burn rate, we call burn rate, they probably say cash flow, we actually say the same thing. So to control your burn rate is actually quite critical, because you probably will have a lot of changing need to make. The plan might not be run as you want. You don't plan it, as your full capacity. You leave some flexibility, so you can make some changing based on the changing of the environment. So I think that's probably my advice as well, to control your burn rate and clear off your running way. Yeah, that's me.
So we'll hand over the question to the audience. If any in the audience got questions for any of the speakers, it's Q&A.
Oh, you can talk.
Yeah, I have a question for Dr. Lin.
Okay.
You mentioned something about there are some business opportunities in New Zealand that's not available yet, but it's available elsewhere in the world. So what are the non-existent business opportunities in New Zealand do you think could work in
Really, I should share the question. Yeah, I share one thing I'm currently looking at. Probably it's not the best things, and then promise me if you success, and then you just kind of ask me the company. So one of the things I'm looking at the moment is the second-hand luxury things, sales in New Zealand. I can't say sales, second-hand luxury industry. I'm not sure how many of you really get into the luxury industry. I think that's a good opportunity. One thing is, if you really talk about luxury things, you can't actually buy the luxury things these days. You need to buy a lot of things before, and then you can get a luxury things. For example, we talked about the Birkin bag. So the Birkin bag is average $30,000. You probably need to spend $200,000 buying a Hermes product, and then you have the opportunity to purchase the Birkin bag. So why not buy a second-hand Birkin bag if there's a demand? So and then people talk about whether we have this demand. Well, I think as the society development, so especially in New Zealand, I've been here for a long time. We talk about like 20 years ago, most of the TVs, they just have a handbag and so whatever. And then these days, if you really pay attention, TVs start to carry Louis Vuitton or Prada. What about 5 years for people who want to carry Birkin, Kelly to show their identity? But the question is where they can buy this bag. There's not even a Hermes shop in New Zealand. So the second-hand luxury product, we'll talk about the ladies and we'll talk about the men's. The watch, Rolex watch, you buy it, there's only 1 or 2 Rolex watch you can keep the value, but most Rolex watch, you buy it and it depreciates, it cut half or even third in 2 or 3 years. Why not buy a second-hand one? So people need those identities. So this industry definitely exists, maybe not now, maybe another 2 or 3 years down the line. So that's the thing. That is already be very successful in Japan, China, American, the second-hand, or talk about vintage luxury industry. So
yeah, just be careful you don't buy any fake ones. Anyway, any other questions?
I have a question. I have a question about hiring. So in New Zealand, if you get hiring wrong, it's very costly to fix. So what are your approach to hiring to ensure you get the right team member into your businesses? Anyone really? Or everyone?
So for startup, there's a key line. So hire slow, fire fast. So of course, fire fast in New Zealand is probably not an easy thing, but hire slow. So you need to have your own judgments. You need to have. I have in my phone there's an interview questions. So from the interview questions, I can kind of know the people is really what I want and or not. Second, you are your own friends. So for my personal view, I judge attitude more than abilities. But because of different industries, so I always can find a good position for them, but attitude is the most important thing. I will talk about the people who have very strong abilities but bad attitude. They just like a rust for the company, and then you will rust other people, like rust I and the things. So hire slow and fire fast.
James?
Well, yes, it's one of them.
You do
I've got
outsourcing.
it. I do outsourcing, and then the thing is, it's sort of like a lot of the times, I find that interviewing them, asking them questions, kind of like, sometimes a bit of waste of time, because at the end of the day, you can't interview a programmer. What language do you speak? Or what language do you program? And then, so we put them to test. Like for example, when we hire an accountant, we test them with different questions and problems. I think test them is the best way. And then also for salespeople, we have a series of I think they call it aptitude tests, which has been quite effective. Interviews to me, just having a chat and knowing who the person is, and maybe you pick up a few things, but then can't really test their true ability.
Yeah, I probably will say this quite briefly. So I think for us, depends on the company we invest in, what stage are they. If it's very early stage, then they probably do more due diligence of the person by the network and the CV. So it's more like a general interview hiring process. But when the company in expansion stage, when they actually need some quite a good talent, then we're actually using a professional headhunter, because in that stage you probably can't just tell by your own like experience, or you have too limited talent pool. So particular for, we want to hire someone overseas and we want to get the person, so we literally need the professional headhunter in the market. And also sometimes you'll need to really get fast when you see the good person, because sometimes, if you're a bit slow, then they might go to the other company. So you have to, if you recognize it's a good talent, you actually have to grab it quite quickly. So yeah, that's always.
Hi, I'm Charlie, and please allow me to play the devil's advocate, ask a hard question here. And Dr. Lee mentioned something about geopolitics, and that's a question from this angle, right? We know China has been a geopolitical competition with America and with the West for the last 5 or 10 years. I would say being a Chinese company probably hasn't been doing a favor when it comes to being a Chinese company. Think about Huawei or TikTok or WeChat. If you're a Chinese company, you probably attract extra scrutiny from the Western government, and even more especially from the private jewelers. They may think about you are controlled by the Chinese government. You may pass your data to the Chinese government. So my question to any of the panelists tonight is, has any of your company experienced this kind of backlash? And if you have, how do you overcome that? And I understand you may not have experienced before, but also somehow it's a political related question. I want to invite Nice, the politician here tonight. Say, Nice, do you have any view on the question of being a quote-unquote Chinese company that are more of a liability or asset under the current political environment in the Western country? Thank you.
Can I just say two things? My earlier comments about Chinese people at a certain part of our New Zealand society, I think I refuse to believe that there isn't a bamboo ceiling. Now that bamboo ceiling can be both created by the New Zealand society, but also sometimes it's internal as well. We created it for ourselves. Now what I mean by that, and I'll get into your question, is that sometimes the way we do things, sometimes the way we think about things as Chinese people are not the same way that New Zealanders think about things. It's not the same way that they want to do things. Often in politics, especially when I see that, it's the same messaging, it's the same message, at the very core of it, but how we say it is so different, and then that's where a lot of the tension is created. So sometimes when you say a Chinese company attracts scrutiny, yes, absolutely, but some of it can be mitigated by the way you do your comms, by the way that your company goes out into society and attracts consumers and do your marketing. I often say, and I hope this doesn't come out as racist, but I often see, if you send me 2 pieces of comms, like press release, just by the font it uses, I know whose is a Chinese company and who did it in New Zealand. It's that obvious. And so obviously, xenophobia and all that, it exists, but a lot of the times it's because we haven't really found the way to communicate to our fellow New Zealanders. So some of the responsibility is on the company itself. But in terms of a wider geopolitics, there is no denying that there is always going to be tension, there's always going to be a political football being kicked around, and a lot of that time is the people, right? It's us Chinese New Zealanders. I've been called a spy before, still am, still being called one, sorry, not still being called one. All the time, and that unfortunately is the reality. And I think it's up to us also to call out that hypocrisy. A lot of the times, both big powers have their own weaknesses, and we all can improve on things. I was in Latin America just 3 days ago, and just seeing, for instance, Chile being played between the 2 big powers, and that there's hypocrisy on both sides, there's all things we need to improve. So I think it's up to us to call that out as well. So I think definitely it's both within and without, so that's reality, and we can all work on it together. Actually, I work with a lot of Chinese companies, like both state enterprise and private sectors, but I don't really see a lot of scrutiny, but I do see there's a lot of compliance issues. So a lot of Chinese companies probably not familiar with the regulations and laws and compliance in New Zealand, so they are easier, I can say they're easier to under scrutiny under the regulatory sector like FMA or DIA. So I think this is something like many Chinese companies not really focusing on. They're more focusing on making money rather than how to improve the process and making the compliance issues better. So I think that can be mitigated by as long as they're meeting all the law requirements and regulatory requirement, and I think there shouldn't be any issues.
What I think is don't think too much, try to earn money. Yeah, so for startup, for the first 3 years or first 5 years, just focus on what you're doing. You're too small to be worry about the political things. And then the things you do worry, I think in the planning stage, you need to consider whether the geopolitical factor will affect your business. That's the key things. Maybe you just need to consider whether down the road China and New Zealand will have a trade war or these kind of things. And then you ask yourself, what's the possibilities? If possibility very low, you can do the business. If you say, oh, there's a very high possibilities, you probably try to think a way to avoid it. So that's for the startup. If we talk about big company, there's a different ways. But for this session, we talk about startup. I think for this geopolitical things, you don't need to worry too much. And then if we have another session, we'll talk about what's the big company to manage. It's very complicated issues. It's not only in the political level, it's probably in the country level, and then it's not only New Zealand, it's probably all over the world.
One day, if my business can cause both Chinese and New Zealand government's attention, I will be very proud of. And I think that's the right time to retirement for me.
I think for me, I just had one adding probably. If you are a hardware company, then when you're thinking of how you structure a supply chain, that can be something you might need to looking at, because you don't want your supply chains continuously being stopped by these those different government relationships change. So that is something probably it's a little bit relevant if you are a hardware startup when you structure your supply chain. For example, where you get your chips, where you get your those things. So this is something you need to think of. Otherwise, you might got everything ready, but this thing you are never able to get, then you can actually deliver your product to the market. So I will say that it's more hardware company. Is something will be related, physical thing.